So today I'm going to be reading Higurashi. Oh shit, I need to fucking Higurashi. Oh shit. There we go, that's better. I hate myself. That's not what I want. Make sure it's all working, it looks like it is, that's good. Make sure it's all working, it looks like it is, that's good. Jesus Christ. Okay, there we go. Let's not screw this up anymore. And let's get right into this. I have watched the anime and I've started watching the sequel, people are calling it. So I'm quite excited for this. Demon Away chapter. Welcome to the world of Higurashi when they cry. The only Kakushi arc will be the opening, inviting you into this world. Sit back, relax and enjoy life in Hinamizawa to the fullest. The difficulty of this chapter is extremely high, but I hope you will enjoy the reward. Please do not deplore yourself. Even if this world does not forgive you, I will forgive you. Please don't deplore yourself. Even if you do not forgive the world, I will forgive you. So please tell me, what would it take for you to forgive me? By Frederica Buncastle. AD 1983, the early summer of the 50th year of the Showa era. If I was going to be ripped apart anyways, having my body ripped apart would have been far better. I trusted her. No, I still trust her. Even in this very moment, I trust her. But I'm starting to realize I only wanted to trust her because I refused to accept the truth. It was as if I was trying to convince myself, in such a silly, sobbing voice. And those tears making a mess of my face. That mechanical, repetitive sound finally stilled, and everything fell silent. Only the cry of the cicadas remained, annoyingly loud. And yet, I felt as if I could still hear her voice. But that's not possible. She is no longer speaking. The only one crying is me. She never cried. Even when she repeated those words over and over, she never expressed any emotion, because there were none to show. If she had no tears to shed for me, then I shouldn't need to shed any for her. Then why? This pain, my eyes getting moist. Why was this happening? I still wanted to believe. I hadn't been split apart. That's enough, right? Inside me, an inner voice whispered gently. My spirit had suffered enough, and countless times I'd wavered over whether I should just throw the battered thing away. Except, I've stubbornly refused to do that, haven't I? I'd feel better if I just threw it away. Even knowing that, I chose to believe, didn't I? Only I can understand that painful struggle, and appreciate it. Hey, me? I've tried more than enough. I'll acknowledge that much. So, isn't it alright to just take the easy way out? Besides, I'm not throwing it away. I'm leaving it behind, with her, like flowers by a grave. Now then, calm your nerves. Even though you can't feel your right arm, just lift it up, and with every swing, forget a little more. That kindness made me happy. That adorable smile brought me joy. I liked petting your head. I loved how demure you were. Because this will be the last time. Because when I swing this down, I'll forget. This is my first and last bouquet for you. Perhaps I really did. love you. Damn. Jesus, that's loud. That's a pretty cool video. Somebody has been apologising for a while now. I wonder what she's apologising for. It felt wrong to eavesdrop, so I tried to ignore it. It had been a while since I'd last went to the city. I only returned to attend the funeral of a relative. Even though I'd lived there until last month, I found the bustle of the city to be overwhelming. Those skyscrapers and the multi-lane roads, the melodious cacophony of the crosswalk, even the campaign speeches blaring in front of the station felt nostalgic. The place where I live now isn't nearly as lively. There's only the chirping of locusts and the babbling of brooks, and the cry of the Higurashi, the evening cicadas. Rather than making me feel lonely, that quietness had begun to instill a sense of serenity. There is nothing where I am living now. I don't just mean there aren't any burger joints, there aren't even vending machines. No music stores, no restaurants, no arcades. An ice cream parlour? No chance. The nearest town has some stuff like that, but it's an hour away by bike. But come to think of it, it wasn't really a big deal. There were music stores and arcades and ice cream parlours where I used to live, but it wasn't like I ever hung out at any of them. I had lived in the city for 10 years, and never had once been to an ice cream parlour. I should have gone at least once. It's only now that I'm starting to regret that a little. Somebody is still apologising. Who is she apologising to? She's apologised so much, so just forgive her already. There's no reason anyone should ever need to apologise so much. I started to feel a bit annoyed at whoever was refusing to forgive her. No matter how bad the mistake, there's nothing that can't be forgiven. There's no such thing as an irreparable mistake. You just need to be more careful next time. She's still apologising. Even now. Then, has she really done something that can't be fixed? I have no idea what she's done, but if it can't be fixed, then that's all the more reason to forgive her. No matter how much she apologises, nothing will change. But even so, she keeps apologizing in such a heartbreaking voice. Hey, you, the one she's apologizing to. Why don't you just go ahead and forgive her? She's apologizing in such a pathetic voice.
圭一、そろそろ着くぞ。起きなさい。
I was finally aroused from my nap by my father's prodding. It seemed the train had reached its final stop. We'd spent hours riding everything from the bullet train to the local routes. It was hard to believe that the landscape beyond the window and the city I was in half a day ago were in the same country. No, that they were even from the same era. From there, we'd take a car deeper into the mountains. Past where the dense forest encroaching on the mountain road suddenly opened up. There, where I live now, Hinamizawa. Even though we were approaching summer, the morning air still had a frigid bite. Although, in exchange, you could fill your lungs up with crisp, clean air. Flipping open the window, I was greeted with a verdant expanse. Nothing but trees. The neighbouring house was far away on the other side, so I was probably the only one enjoying that view and that air. I filled my lungs with another deep breath. Since I started living in Hinamizawa, I learned that even air had its own taste. I quickly finished getting ready for school and headed downstairs for breakfast. My mother was the only one there. My father was nowhere to be seen. He was probably up working until the early morning. Turn this down a bit. There we go. Dad had a rather unconventional job as a painter. It's such a laid-back profession. Get up when you want, sleep when you want, and work when you want. I was so jealous of that easygoing lifestyle. I even wrote for school that I wanted to be a painter when I grew up. Dad was ecstatic about that. It was just because it looked easy. I'd never tell him that though. Mom laid breakfast out on the table. Seaweed, pickled vegetables, raw egg, and grilled salmon. My mom was such a good cook. It was scary. A perfect, immaculate, ideal breakfast. Unlike my dad, who didn't even know the meaning of the word schedule, my mum never squandered any time or effort. She hummed a little tune as she brought over the miso soup. It seemed like she was in a good mood today.
こっちに引っ越してきてから圭一が早起きになって嬉しいわね。
早起きしないと朝飯を食いそびれるんだよ。
I thought I was being cute, responding with a wisecrack after being praised for being good.
ご飯はいっぱい？それとも半分くらいでいい？
山盛り。
First, I savoured the streaming hot rice with the seaweed. After that, I covered it with the egg. Between bites of rice, I enjoyed the crunch of the pickles. Not bad at all. Excellent, as usual. Watching me clean my plate, Mom gave me a warm smile.
こっちに引っ越してきてから圭一が朝食を欠かさないんで嬉しいわね。
I was not a morning person when we lived in the city. I slept right until the last minute before school and rarely ate breakfast. Boycotting the breakfast, Mum made me each morning. That was probably the only way I could protest being forced to attend cram school. I guess that was what you'd call my rebellious phase. I wouldn't so much as to look at the breakfast she woke up early every day to make. If I could go back in time, I'd slap myself. Mindful of the time, Mum rushed me along with a wide grin.
そろそろレナちゃんと待ち合わせの時間じゃない？急いで急いで。
Mom really seemed to enjoy the fact that her son was going to school with a girl. Raina is one of my classmates. She really loves looking after people, coming to meet me every day without fail. The way I looked at it, a guy my age walking to school with a girl was just lame. But, well, keeping a classmate waiting for me every day wouldn't be very considerate. Seriously though, how long does Reina wait there for me every morning? Taking one last gulp of miso soup, I raced for the door.
レナちゃんにお漬物ありがとうって伝えてね。
Come to think of it, those pickles weren't store-bought, were they? If I'd known that, I would have savoured them a bit more.
あいよ。
ケイチくん、おはよ
Her cheerful greeting was as fresh as the morning itself.
相変わらず早えな。たまにはのんびり朝寝坊したっていいんだぜ。
う。お寝坊したらケイチくんを待たせちゃうじゃない。
She's so conscientious and such a good
そ
person.
ん時は置いてく。
ケイチくん冷たい。いつも待っててあげてるのに。
サクサク置いてく。キリキリ置いてく。
どうして冷たいんだろう。
Reina had a slightly troubled look on her face. Toying with her was rather fun because of how quickly her mood changed.
嘘。ちゃんと待ってるよ。
With those words, Reina seemed to relax. Her face flushed bright red.
ありがとう。
レナが来るまでずーっと待ってる。いつまでも。
Reina turned bright red, steam rising from her head as her brain short-circuited. She's especially weak to this sort of talk. It's quite rare to find someone this fun to tease.
レナはロマンスものの文庫本は読んだことあるか？
ないよ。読んだことない。
From that response, I gathered she was interested in them, but was too embarrassed to actually buy one. I couldn't imagine what would happen if she did read one. She'd probably turn red and pass out.
そうそう。お袋から伝言。漬物サンキューでしたって。
どういたしまして。どうだった？しょっぱくなかったかな？
They weren't that salty. Actually, they had a pretty light flavour to them. It would have been fine to just be honest and say they were good, but apparently I couldn't be that forthright.
その前に聞きたい。あの漬物を漬けたのはレナか？レナのお母さんか？
なんで聞くんだろう。しょっぱかった？
Her attitude completely changed as she began to panic frantically.
レナか？レナのお母さんか？
なんで作った人聞くんだろう。太郎。
どっちが作ったかで感想が著しく変わる。
She counted frantically on her fingers, trying to remember the amount of salt she'd used to pickle them. It wasn't like I was trying to tease her, but I couldn't stop myself. Guys who take pleasure in this kind of thing are probably the worst. Guys like me. Reina nervously opened and closed her mouth over and over, trying to muster a response.
レナだけど。
うまかった。前回に続きなかなかだったぜ。飯との相性は最高だった。
Her face went bright red again. She was completely spacing out. It was truly a lot of fun to tease her. I pray that Reina never gets taken advantage of by some lowlife. Keep at it, Reina. I'll train you until you handle it like the average person. Or so I decided for myself.
行こうぜ。ミオンを待たせるとあいつうるさいぞ。
Seeing as she just keeps spacing out otherwise, I called Reina back to reality so we could make our way to school. This strange, easily flustered girl is Reina Ryugu. I've only known her for about a month, but I've come to realize it's not just her name that's strange. Coming up to the next rendezvous point, we saw another person waiting for us. Noticing us, she waved.
お、来た来た。遅いよ二人とも。
いつも遅いのはお前の方だろ。
In sharp contrast to the diligent Reina, this one marched to the beat of her own drum. She's Mion Sonozaki. For what it's worth, she's our senior and head of the class.
おはようレナ。そしてケイちゃんお久しぶり。何年ぶりだっけ
2日しか休んでねえよ。
そうだっけか前に会った時はこんなにちっちゃくて可愛かったのにな。
Mion's gaze started at my chest, then dropped straight down, focusing on the point between my legs. So she was saying it was my crotch that was cuter back then. Before you ask, just to be clear, I've never actually tried to show it to her. I've grown quite splendidly, you'd be surprised. Not only is he bigger, but he has a little mustache now. Why are the things not working now? Being so engorged with energy every morning is quite the problem now. I'll introduce you next time, so be sure to greet him properly. Don't say next time, right now is just fine. How about letting the little guy get a breath of fresh morning air? I don't think I've ever heard talk so dirty you could smell it fouling up the morning air before. Mion sure does act like an old man sometimes. Gotcha. Time for the big reveal. Hope you don't regret it. As my hand reached for my fly, Reina began to ramble in a near panic.
ねえねえ、何の話？何の話だろう？何の話だろう？
Red-faced and flustered, Reina tried to play dumb, but it was obvious she knew exactly what we were talking about.
どうだった？久しぶりの都会はさ。
Mion switched gears, dropping the dirty talk and changing the topic to something more befitting of a pleasant morning.
葬式で行っただけだぜ。慌ただしいだけだったよ。
でさ、探しといてくれた？頼んどいたやつ。
お前、人の話聞いてないだろ。俺は葬式で帰っただけだぜ。おもちゃ屋巡りをしてる余裕なんかなかったんだよ。
ち。おもちゃ屋とホビーショップは全然違うよ。特に洋物、こっちじゃなかなか手に入らないからね。みーちゃん、またゲームの話？
Mion nodded proudly as Reina giggled.
そう、ケイちゃんに洋芸のカタログを持ってきてもらいたかったんだけどね。
Westport was short for Western Imported Games. Using that abbreviation did make it sound pretty geeky.
そんなのまた通販で取り寄せりゃいいじゃねえか。
ま、そうするかな。またプレイングの熱いゲームを入荷するからね。今度は私にも分かりやすいゲームがいいな。
Mion is a board and card game enthusiast, and I hear she's collected quite a lot of different ones. According to Reina, Mion's room has kind of become a museum for domestic and foreign games.
俺にも分かりそうなゲームがあったらやらせてくれよ。
いいよ。ケイちゃんさえ良ければね。でもうちらのレベルは高いよ。
上等じゃねえか。俺だって遊び100番遅れを取るつもりはないぜ。
じゃあ今度はケイチ君も仲間に加わるのかな。
Bristling with joy from head to toe, Reina looked back and forth between me and Mion. Mion gave her an affirmative wink, and her expression perked up even further.
男の子ってきっと外で遊ぶ方が好きだと思ってたからダメかと思ってたよ。
Reina laughed happily. From such a friendly conversation, you wouldn't think I'd moved here less than a month ago. I understood that they did all they could to make a transfer student like me feel at home. I'll have to try harder to fit in, so they won't feel like they have to try to make me feel welcome. I felt like if I acted a bit more open than I usually am, it should probably be about right for this place. Hinamizawa was a really small village. Not only was there only one school, but there was only one class. That class encompasses all different grades and ages. There are about 30 students at different levels, and they all study in the same class. I'm told that, long ago, there used to be a bigger school building, and they had actual separate classes. However, it seems something happened that made it become a single class, and now it's stayed that way out of tradition. I was shocked at first, but humans adapt pretty quickly. I've already got quite used to it. The sound of children playing started right from the morning. With such a lively mood, it felt more like a kindergarten than a proper school. Not that it was a bad thing. Mion, who had been walking in front of us up until then, suddenly let me take the lead. Right in front of the classroom door. So I was meant to slide the door open and enter the room first. Heh. Too bad. I wasn't going to fall for that again.
ここで先頭を譲るとはな。お手並み拝見ってことかよ。
Mion chuckled with a hearty smirk on her face.
どうしたの二人とも。
下がってろレナ、危ないぞ。やつだ。
え？じゃあ、さとこちゃんが？
Her name was Satoko Hojo. She was a disrespectful, impudent, bossy kid. The way she talks was annoying, but it would be immature to get worked up over just that. The real problem was this.
見え見えの罠だな。引き戸の上に挟んだ黒板消し。見え見えだぜ、サトコ。
A hearty laugh came from behind the door.
お見事、ケイちゃん。こりゃ今回は勝負あったかな。
いや、相手はサトコだ。これだけとは思えない。
After falling for such intricate traps since the day I transferred, I no longer let my guard down. Satoko lived to combine a variety of traps. Traps that were simply there to bait you into the main one. Traps that relentlessly kept coming at you like a sadistic Rube Goldberg machine. The list goes on. As well as being clever, they almost never misfire. When you least expect it, she strikes. No escape, no time to relax.
見たところ黒板消しは普通。石とかは入れてないみたいだな。
I took a pretty heavy hit from a blackboard eraser loaded with rocks on my first day.
じゃあさ、ガラガラって開けて落としちゃえばいいんじゃないかな。
それだ。
That's what Satoko was after, making me focus my attention upward, so as I lifted my hand to the door, there were thumbtacks stuck to the sliding door handle with tape, a frightening trap, a potent and terrifying trap, concealed by using the blackboard eraser.
見事なコンボだ、サトコ。だが所詮はガキの浅知恵だったな。
Assured of my victory, I threw the door open and stepped into the room. I felt something strange at my ankle. It was similar to the sensation of a jump rope catching my leg. By the time I realized she had me, hook, line and sinker, it was already too late. I began to fall in an almost picturesque manner.
ケイちゃん、避けて。
Instinctively reacting to Mion's shrill warning, I twisted my body in midair before I landed on the floor.
いってて。
An ink stone filled to the brim was placed right where I would have landed. I shuddered, imagining the situation had I landed square on it.
あらあら、これは。おはようございます、ケイチさん。朝から賑やかですわね。
Still sprawled in an awkward position, I was greeted by a mocking voice.
一段とスペシャルなトラップワークになったじゃないか、サトコ。
私何のことかわかりませんもの。朝からついてませんわね。
てめえ。あ、て。
It seemed I had inadvertently sprained my ankle back a little when I'd landed. Better than landing on that inkstone. A small hand gently rubbed my head.
圭一の痛いの飛んでいけです。
The small, dainty hand continued to gently stroke my head.
腰とかはくじかなかったですか？こうして撫でていれば痛いのは消えてきますです。
I thought about asking how rubbing my head would help my back, but I didn't. It's not so much about the way you actually do, it's the thought that counts.
ありがとな。リカちゃんのおかげで痛みが引いてきたぜ。
リカちゃん、おはよう。レナにおはようございます。みんなにもおはようございますです。
Rika-chan greeted each of us with an adorable little bow. It was infectious. Reina, Mion, and I all bowed back.
リカちゃんはいい子だよな。それに比べてサトコは。
I glared over in her direction. Satoko was whistling while rather deliberately trying to avoid eye contact.
サトコはいい子でございますのことよ。
いい子はこんな凶悪な罠は仕掛けないぞ。
言いがかりでございますわ。何の証拠があって？
I picked up Satoko by the back of her collar. She looks like a misbehaved cat when I do this. But a cat wouldn't be setting traps. She's much harder to deal with.
ごめんなさいって言ってみな。言わないなら。
I cocked my index finger on my thumb, letting it tremble as I brought it closer to Satoko's forehead.
暴力反対ですの。証拠もないのに。
言っとくが俺のデコピンはすごく痛い。ベニヤくらいなら割る。
やめて、寄らないでけだもの。
人様が聞いたら誤解するような言い方をするんじゃねえ。
A small hand tugged on the back of my shirt.
圭一が2日間もお休みしたから寂しかったのです。
Rika-chan really is just so... How could I do anything more after being told that? I gently released my grip on Satoko, who at this point was on the verge of tears. She still had her eyes clammed shut as she braced herself for the forehead flick.
悔しくなんかないもん。泣いちゃダメです、サトコ。はいと、おーです。
Rika gently petted the head of her prankster friend. You would never guess those two are the same age. I think Satoko could learn a thing or a million from Rika-chan.
今度はもっとすごい罠を仕掛けなさいですよ。
Wait a minute. As she observed the scene, Reina's expression grew ecstatic as she began to swoon.
サトコちゃん泣いている。かわいいよ。持ち帰っちゃダメだからね。いや、だってこんなにかわいいよ。どんなに可愛くてもダメなの。でもちょっとくらいならダメかな、ダメかな。
Reina kept a cutesy face, even as outrageous ideas spewed from her mouth. According to Mion, Reina is ridiculously weak to cute things and always tries to take them home. Object or person.
物もまずいが誘拐はもっとまずいぞ。諦めろ。
じゃあ見てるだけだよ。それならいいよね。
Reina swooned over Satoko's crying form. If a girl ever goes missing in Hinamizawa, I'll be forced to turn Reina in to the authorities. Forgive me, Reina. I'll be sure to bring you care packages when they put you away.
先生来たよ。早く片付ける。さとこ、すずりあんたのでしょ。
Just from Mion's single statement, the entire mood of the room shifted back to normal. The inkstone was bad, but the thumbtack stuck to the door handle were an even bigger problem. I pulled the tape off carefully, making sure not to skewer myself. Even though Satoko was the one who set it up, everyone had to pick up after her. By the time the teacher entered the room, the bedlam from before had been neatly tidied up.
間に合ったね。起立。気をつけ。
Mion gave out the morning commands. It's difficult being the teacher for all these different grades in one classroom. She has to teach something different to each one. But naturally, she ends up spending all of her time with her younger kids. Reina and Mion, being in the highest grade in the class, ended up mostly doing self-study. They even end up helping teach the younger kids, so it seems like they can never get to their own studies. They're actually way behind where my studies have progressed to. As a result, I'm pretty much taking over for the teacher and helping Reina and Mion with their studies.
ケイチくんはお勉強教えるのうまいね。わかりやすいよ。
Reina took a breather after finishing highlighting an important section.
教える端から自信がなくなるよ。自分の理解の浅さがわかるな。
人に教えるには3倍理解してなければならないって言うしね。ケイちゃんもうちらに教えながら同時に復習もできてるわけなんだよ。
In contrast, this person over here is quite laissez-faire about things. For one, isn't she supposed to be in a higher grade than me?
ミヨンさ、一言じゃないぞ。真剣にやんないとまずいぜ。こんなレベルじゃ。
別に進学校を目指すわけでもないし、受験に必要なそこそこができてりゃ十分十分。
Her staunch defiance was really something else. This was a different type of relaxed than somebody who already knew what was going to be on the entrance exams.
みーちゃん、ケイチくんが頑張って教えてくれるんだからさ、私たちも頑張ろうよ。
レナは素直ないい子だな。先生がきっといい学校に進学させてやるからな。ありがとう。レナには特に教えてやるからな。二人きりでプライベートレッスンだぞ。
プライベートレッスン。
A puff of smoke shaped like a halo popped out of Reina's head. Exactly what kind of private lesson is she fantasizing about that makes her turn so red? I'd like to hear the play-by-play of that next time. While Mion was flipping through her vocabulary flashcards, she threw out a casual question.
都会じゃさ、こんなに勉強しなきゃいけないわけ？
この程度はできないと進学できないね。
進学できないから勉強するわけ？
まあ平たく言えばそうなるな。将来役に立たないのは承知で。
こっちじゃさ、出席日数が足りてりゃみんな進学できるんだよ。
そうなのか？
Studying equals entrance exams. Having that basic law of the universe so easily overturned sent me into a state of shock.
そうかもね。試験で振り落とさなきゃならないほど人もいないし。誰でも進学できるならさ、そんなにガリガリとやることもないんじゃない？
まあそうだけど、でも一般常識程度にはできた方が。
おじさんはそんな無駄な勉強に時間をかけるよりさ、この思春期の貴重な時間をもっと有意義に過ごすために使うべきじゃないかなと考えるわけよ。
It was too profound of a statement to simply laugh off. But since it was Mion, it probably didn't actually have that deep of a meaning. place of a chime, the sound of the principal waving a handbell drifted through the classroom.
ケイちゃん、おしまいおしまい。さあ、楽しいランチタイム。
In a complete 180 from her unmotivated state, Mion gave the commands and signaled the end of a morning period.
ケイチくん、お昼にしよう。
I might have been making a very troubled face. Reina smiled brightly at me.
よっしゃ飯にするか。
There seemed to be different cliques, even within the class. Most of them were divided up by gender and age, but our group was different. Our ages were different, and we had both boys and girls, but we weren't reserved around each other. This level of openness makes a transfer student like me pretty happy. Reina and Mion pushed their desks together so they were facing each other. At the same time, Satoko and Rika-chan were slowly looking their desks over as well.
ケイチくん、早く早く。
Reina waved her chopsticks in an unrefined manner, trying to hurry me along. Unless everyone was together, they wouldn't even open their lunchboxes.
ケイチさんのお弁当は耳ちく日の丸弁当に決まってますわ。さあ、恥ずかしがらずにお見せなさいな。ほらほら。
Even though Satoko was hurling insults at me, she still wouldn't open the lid to her lunchbox until I was there. I pulled out my lunchbox swiftly and dragged my chair over to join the circle.
お待たせ。
では、ミー委員長の号令でいただきますです。
At first, this was kind of embarrassing, but I got used to it pretty fast. At this point, I probably wouldn't even open my own lunchbox if someone else was too slow. Our ages and genders may have all been different, but we're all friends.
いただきます。
The sound of our little five-pod chorus echoed beautifully throughout the classroom. Really though, I've gotten pretty used to this group made up of all girls. Of course, there are other boys in the class, but they were a lot younger, so they were scared to approach me. Well, that's to be expected. Younger boys just see older boys as scary. Compare that to girls, well, at least these girls aren't picky. We put all the side dishes in the middle where everybody was free to pick at them. I thought girls would mind sharing a meal with a guy, so I was a bit flustered joining in. However, Mio noticed that and teased me quite a bit. As the fruit of my efforts, I can now reach over and take sides from anybody's lunch.
あらあら、ケイチさんのお弁当は今日は大奮発ではございませんかと。
あらあら、さとこさんのお弁当こそ大奮発ですこと。煮物がしっくていい感じですわ。
Buying into the fight that Satoko was starting, our chopsticks locked in a cross counter, stubbing into each other's lunch.
ビ
お、里芋がいい感じだぞ。煮物は冷めててもうまいよな。
After seeing my happy face, Rika-chan's expression broke into a little smile.
ミ。夕べの夕食の煮物、少し取っておきましたですよ。
By the way, Satoko and Rika-chan's lunches are always the same. It seems that Rika-chan makes it for the both of them every day.
この煮物もリカちゃんが作ったのかい？こいつはお袋の味クラスだよな。
I was honestly impressed. The carrot rosettes weren't from a mold, they were done by hand with a knife. That's not easy to do.
リカちゃんって何気にそういうの得意なんだよな。お裁縫とかお洗濯とかも上手なの。すごいよね。すっごいよね。リカはいろいろとすんごいんですのよ。
お前が威張ることじゃねえ。
僕よりレナの方がお料理は上手です。そのね。
It seemed that the topic of the conversation switched to Reina when she wasn't expecting it, making her blush and trip over her words. Reina's lunch really was the star of the table. Not only did it look good, it tasted good. Everyone else poured from Reina's lunchbox constantly.
これ前に評判良かったからいっぱい作ってみたの。美味しいかな？
かなり合格点。あ、ミオ、お前取りすぎだよ。
Knocking Mion's chopsticks aside, I reached out, trying to secure my own portion. Satoko and Rika-chan reached over at the same time, and a struggle ensued. Everyone shoveled on mouthful after mouthful while praising it, and Reina's lunchbox was soon empty. It was kind of bad that no one thought to leave any for Reina. But Reina seemed rather satisfied as she looked on.
いかがかしら。レナさんもとてもお料理が上手ですことよ。ケイイチさんとは大違いですの。
だからお前が威張ることじゃねえだろ。
サトコだってケイちゃんと変わらないじゃんよ。あんたブロッコリーとカリフラワーの区別つくようになったわけ？
Satoko's face went pale.
おいおい、ブロッコリーとカリフラワーの違いなら俺だってわかるぜ。
わかりますもの。わかるもん。
It's really hard for her to lie.
ケイイチくん、どっちでも茹でてマヨネーズかけると美味しいじゃない？ いじめちゃかわいそうだよ。みーちゃんも。
Reina hurriedly tried to follow up, but Mion laughed haughtily as she drew closer to Satoko.
まあまあ、家庭科の授業ってことで。じゃあサトコ、これは？
Mion lifted up her chopsticks. Between them was a piece of green stuff wrapped in bacon.
でもそれ、アスパラ、
Mion made eye contact with me, and within 0.3 seconds, I had Rika-chan's mouth covered. Holding a piece of bacon-wrapped asparagus and giving her two choices. She's pretty terrible.
その、黄色がカリフラワー、緑がカリフラ。さあ、どっちだ？多分、黄色がブロッコリーで、青がカリフラワー。でも緑は本当にどっちか分かってる？降参した方が良くない？
I'd expect no less from the class representative. The oldest. The way she drives people into a corner just shows how much experience she has. This is just a hunch, but being brought into the Sonozaki household must be quite the ordeal.
わかりますもの。わかるもん。じゃあ答えなよ。わかるもん。わかるもん。
She finally broke down and started crying. When she acts like this, she actually starts to seem her age. Reina entered a state of euphoria as Satoko bawled her eyes out. Reina was in a state of bliss as she rubbed her cheeks together, Satoko's head, and smothered her. Really, a very content face. One that wouldn't care if the world ended right then. It was that kind of smile.
レナ、ミオンさんがいじめるんですの。かいかい。大丈夫だよ。レナお姉ちゃんが悪い人たちはやっつけちゃうからね。
It was like a flash of lightning.
一体何が？
Both of Reina's fists shot out at a supersonic speed, striking Mion and me squarely in our faces. Before we knew it, Mion and I were sprawled spread eagle on the floor, staring up at the ceiling with matching welts in our faces.
ケイちゃんは食らうの初めてだよね。今日のはまだ甘い方。
甘いって、これよりまだ上があるってのかよ。
With that, Mion and I both slumped our heads back to the floor in unison. From now on, I'll be careful when I'm within striking distance of Reina.
ほら、さとこちゃん、やっつけちゃったよ。かい。お持ち帰りしたい。
Making sure Reina couldn't see it, Satoko stuck her tongue out at us. Damn it all, using Reina like a puppet. Rika-chan massaged our bruises without saying a word. No matter what the day had held, the last school bell always came too soon. Our shadows stretched off into the distance.
ねえケイチくん、明日はさ、何か予定とかあるかな
え
It was such a direct question from Reina, I inadvertently blushed. If it was for a date, then wouldn't you do it more subtly? Reina saw me lost for words and realized that I'd misunderstood and turned red as well.
違うの、そういうのじゃなくて、
So apparently, that wasn't what she meant. But silence, since it's always fun when Reina's in a panic, I went along with it a little.
なんだ、そういうのじゃないのかよ。
Playing it up, I slumped to my shoulders, feigning dejection.
ケイチくん、なんでがっかりしてるんだろう、太郎。みーちゃん。
Unable to hold it in any longer, Mion slapped me on the back.
そっか、そういう攻め方はおじさん知らなかったわ。
Mion was rolling on the floor, clutching her stomach, while Reina flailed around, completely bewildered. I couldn't help but start laughing as well, feeling just a bit guilty. I ruffled Reina's hair.
嘘、ごめん、冗談。悪かったよ。
She really is a cute one.
冗談ってどこからだろう、どこからだろう。
え、あ、途中から。
途中からってことはケイちゃん、最初の真っ赤になったのはあれ演技じゃないんだ。それって。
It was only a momentary lapse, but there was no way Mion would let such a delectable detail slip by her.
あ、いや、その。
Saying anything more was also a bad idea. In my bewildered state, I slipped further into an unfavourable position. After that, Mion continued to tease me a bit about it for a while.
で、明日が暇だと何なんだよ、レナ。
何の話だっけ。
It had been so long that Reina had forgotten. That's how long Mion had teased me.
ケイちゃんさ、まだこのひなみ沢一人じゃ回れないでしょ。
That was true. I hate to say it, but if you blindfolded me and spun me around 3 times like we're playing pin the tail on a donkey, I wouldn't be able to tell up from down here.
そうだな。町へ行くのと学校へ行く以外はまだ自信ないな。
そうそう、それでね、明日ね、みーちゃんとレナでお散歩しながらケイチくんにひなみ沢を案内してあげようよってことになって。
That would be a godsend. Frankly, I was happy about the offer.
もちろん行くでしょ。
暇ならな。
女の子が誘ってんじゃん。
暇ならな。
どうせ暇なんでしょ。
暇ならな。
I was being stubborn so as not to give a clear yes or no. Even though I thought it was a godsend, I'm too much of a scamp to say so up front.
ケイチくん、暇じゃないのかな。
While Mion and I had our rather sour back and forth, Reina peeked over at me hesitantly. Figuring I'd been a bit too rough on her, I just gave in.
すまん、許せ、ごめん。暇だ。
よかった。
The trepidation disappeared from Reina's face as it blossomed into a smile.
おうおう。ミオンさんとレナさんじゃ随分と温度差がありますじゃん。
It seems Mion didn't care for how rude I was to her, compared to how quickly I agreed with Reina. But her being annoyed was very interesting. So I pushed Reina forward, speeding up our pace to leave Mion behind.
行こう、レナ。 明日は二人っきりで出かけような。嫌味なミオンは置いてって。
ケイチくんがそれでいいなら。案内しようって提案したのは私。しかとすんな、前原ケイチ。
二人きりでピクニック嬉しいな。弁当は持ってくか、レナ。
お弁当いるならレナ作っちゃおうかな。レナもしかとすんな。二人がラブラブだって村中に回覧板を。じゃあレナ、今日は早く帰ってお弁当の準備するね。明日が楽しみ。じゃあね、ケイチくんにみーちゃん、さようなら。
Raina bounded off like she was walking on the moon. After the dust settled, all that was left was me standing next to Mion sprawled out on the ground. There was a welt on her face.
大丈夫か？ミオンとレナの立ち位置2メートルは離れてたはずだぞ。
あんたが来て以来、切れ味は増す一方。おじさん身が持たないわ。
Maybe it'd be easier if you stopped saying stuff that makes Raina want to hate you. Or else this will end up being Mion's slapstick comedy hour. If that hadn't happened, the results might be fatal.
くじけるなよ、ミオン。レナのジャブを見切れるのはお前しかいない。
私は膝じゃないかと思ってんだけどね。
Could it be that we were hanging around with an unrivaled martial artist's master? Maybe someday we'll see her debut in extreme contact sport.
レナには負けられないぞ。ミオンも鍛えてリベンジだ。
ケイちゃんがしてよ。おじさんは応援してる。
Mion and I reaffirmed our determination to discover a way to counter Raina's infallible technique. Chips acquired, we're a mixed grade, we don't have a uniform. So I save. And then what was it again? We're mixed grade, we don't have a uniform, okay. I took it a little too easy on the morning of my day off. I was totally late. And to top it off, that pesky mom of mine pushing a return journey errand on me just as I'm trying to leave the house. Today was the day Arena and Mion were going to show me around Hinamizawa. Reina and Mion were already waiting for me at the meeting place.
ケイちゃん遅いぞ。
悪い悪い。責めるのは昨べの面白かった特番に行ってくれ。
ほう、女の子との待ち合わせに遅刻して言い訳がそれってわけ？みーちゃんだって今来たばかりなんだよ。ゆうべの密着24時間面白かったしねえ。
She was just as guilty as me. Reina was carrying a pretty heavy-looking handbag. What is that? Mion answered my unspoken question with a wink. That's right, Reina really did make a picnic.
ケイちゃん、あの後レナ大張り切りだったらしいよ。
別に俺がけしかけたわけじゃないだろう。
そんな大変じゃなかったから気にしないでよね。ゆうべから今朝まであのテンションらしいよ。責任取れんの？
わかった。俺も男だ。責任は取る。
責任ってなんだろう。
As we both turned around slowly to look at Raina, our gazes drifted downwards to the massive handbag she was carrying. It didn't seem logically feasible that it would be entirely filled with lunchboxes. Except this was Raina we were talking about here.
2キロくらいかな。レナね、荷物持つときよっこらしょって言ってた。5キロ。それは
Are you enjoying yourself there, Horseman?
オーバー。ケイチ君男の子だから。きっといっぱい食べるだろうと思ってたくさんね。もう行こう。よっこらよっこ。
訂正、俺も5キロ。
手伝いはするけど全部食べるんだからね。レナを悲しませたら許さないよ。
Wait, I was muted. God damn it. As sparsely populated as the village was, you could still run into people just by walking around. Have you ever watched Higurashi or know anything about it?
あ、こんにちは。
こんにちは。あら、そちらは。確か前原くんだったかしら。
Nope. It's interesting to say the least. My two companions exchange greetings with everybody we run across. All of those passerbys even knew me by name.
なんで俺ってこんなに有名人なんだ？
We passed 3 people, and when all 3 of them knew me, I started to feel a bit paranoid.
悲しいかな。
I mean, basically at the start we heard main guy here basically saying he trusted somebody as he beat someone to death. That's all I can say.
ひなみ沢は人が少ないからね。みんな顔見知りなんだよね。
つまりなんだ？知らない顔が歩いてれば、それは自動的に新しく引っ越してきた前原さんってことになるわけか。
うん、そういうことになるね。
It was a process of elimination. You could only pull off in a place like this, but it was quite effective. From now on, I'd better make sure to maintain a good reputation. The day I'm discovered accidentally gawking at a dirty magazine in the bookstore, I can expect all the villagers labelling me as a lech by the next day. Hinamizawa is not to be trifled with. That's not the end of this nightmare.
もちろんわかるよ。最初に会ったのが牧野林店の竹蔵おじさん。趣味は盆栽と尺八なんだよ。次が乾物屋の次男の大輔くん。趣味は狙撃で将来の夢は超 A 級スナイパーだとか。それで今の人は入江診療所の看護師の美代さん。
I thought I recognized the Ala Ala voice. I thought that was...
趣味は野鳥の観察と撮影だって。
すれ違った全員の名前までわかるのかよ。プロフィールまで。
Seeing my surprise, Mion and Rainier exchanged looks and burst into laughter.
はあね。ここいらは都会みたいにご近所付き合いが希薄じゃないからね。
試しに聞いてみよう。今ここにいる俺は誰だ？
前原圭一くん。意地悪なこと言うけど本当は優しいテレ屋さん。転校してきてようやく3週間。趣味は昼寝。最近トランクス派に転向したよね。
もういいもういい。
Jeez.
ト トランクス。
それもいい。
Apparently, there is absolutely nothing you can keep hidden here. Hinamizawa was not a place to be trifled with.
これじゃあさ、俺のための案内ってより俺のお披露目みたいだな。
そうだね。うちらさ、これだけ賑やかに練り歩いてたからね。みんな思うんじゃない？ケイちゃんもひなみ沢に馴染んでくれたんだって。ひなみ沢は過疎だから、村中みんなが新しい仲間を歓迎してくれてるの。
I thought about brushing it off with something to the effect of, "You're kidding me," but I held back. Had I ever greeted someone who had just moved into the city like this before? Thinking about that made me believe what that they said wasn't a joke at all. We passed another person. Of course, we were called out to again the same way.
あら、こんにちは。仲良しそうでいいわね。
藤島さんちのおばさんだよ。こんにちは。
あら、前原くん、両手に花でいいわね。どう？生活はもう慣れた？
Instead of regurgitating a prepared response like I would have in the city, I responded with an empathetic nod. The old woman chuckled, voicing her appreciation of how energetic I was.
グッド。
As I looked back over to Reina and Mion, they gave me a wink.
でね、そろそろお昼にしないかな。
Reina's brilliant smile signaled the approach of an event that both Mion and I were trying to forget. We both looked at each other.
俺も男だ。努力はする。だが量が多すぎる。
よし、ケイちゃん、ここはおじさんに任せなさい。
Mion has never seemed as reliable as she does right now. I'd expect no less from the class representative.
レナ、どうせ食べるならさ、見晴らしのいいところで食べない？それいい。賛成。
Reina nodded her head happily in response to Mion's proposal. Cresting the top of a stone stairway, a shrine drawn straight out of my imagination appeared before us. It had worn down a bit through the years, but the fallen leaves had been swept up, giving it a tidy feeling.
ここはね、古出神社っていうの。多分見晴らしが一番いいところかな。ここの場所、よく覚えといてね。もうすぐここでお祭りがあるんだから。
へえ、祭りにしちゃちょっと早いシーズンだよな。
綿流しは夏祭りじゃなくてね、昔は冬の終わりを喜ぶお祭りだったらしいよ。
I was embarrassed for assuming the festivals had to be held in the summer.
さて、弁当を広げてっと。
Various coloured lunchboxes were placed one after another on top of the plastic sheet. It sure did smell delicious. It was Raina's home cooking. It went without saying that it would be delicious. But is it even possible to finish all of this? Hey, Mion, it'll take more than just a good view to get this all down, you know.
こんにちはです。
It was Rika-chan and Satoko. Why are they here? Mion grinned over at me. I see. This was her secret plan. The power in numbers. You have my thanks, Mion. Following on up when all the pieces are in place is my speciality.
騒がしいから来てみれば、これは何ですの？
見りゃわかるだろ。これからランチタイムだ。ビュッフェスタイルだ。レナの手作り弁当に舌鼓だ。
そんなの見ればわかるでございますわ。どうして人様の庭でご座なんか広げてますの？
神社は公共の場所だぞ。勝手に独占するな。
圭一の言う通りですよ。みんなのお庭にしますです。
くー、やっぱりリカちゃんはいい子だな。座りな、そこ。一緒に食べよう。
After opening up a spot for Rika-chan, I promptly turned my back on Satoko.
ちょっとお待ちなさいな。私はどこに座ればいいんですの？
お前に座る場所はないし、食べる分もない。
大丈夫だよ。さとこちゃんの分もちゃんとあるから。
ない。さとこの分も俺がいただく。
そんなことは許せませんの。リカ。はい、お箸です。
Both Satoko and I leapt at the boxes, having it out with each other.
いやはや、ケイちゃん乗せるのうまいわ、ほんと。才能あるのかもしれない。はい、お皿。みーちゃんもリカちゃんも。
Reina whipped out pairs of chopsticks and paper plates.
僕たちも頑張らないとなくなってしまうです。そうだね。よし、参戦と行くかな。いっぱい食べてね。ちゃんとみんなの分あるから。
Reina said as she opened up a thermos. Just then, I realized that this lunch was made under the assumption that 5 people would be eating. It didn't change how much there was, but the implication behind it was different.
そのハンバーグは渡しませんわ。
いや、肘は反則だろう、さとこ。
襟首をつかむのも反則でございます。
It was a tough battle, blocking with a full momentum and an elbow in the opening moves. Satoko appeared to have the upper hand, but the difference in our proficiency with the chopsticks proved to be fatal and gave me the upper hand.
最後のミートボール。
校長さとこ、破れたり。
Sound like he choked on it, jeez. Satoko and I amiably began choking at the same time, falling backwards and spasming. Rika-chan patted me on the head to clear it, even though it was actually stuck in my throat. Seeing that made Reina blush and breathe heavily in excitement. It was almost like flowers were floating all around her. Mion advised Reina to refrain from saying anything that could get her locked up. This is how our meals usually go. I'd do anything in my power, just so things could stay like this. The intense battle calmed, and finally, everyone reached a point where they could begin talking. Receiving tea from the thermos, I'd let out a small sigh.
日本語ってやつはさ、どうしてこう味に対する賛辞が少ないんだろうな。
That's actually something I've also thought about for some strange reason. It's like oishi is like the only one that you hear like commonly used, right?
食事中の団らんって考えがそもそも近代に入ってからだからじゃない？昔の人は無言で食事を済ませたそうだし、作る人もちょっぴり寂しかったろうね。きっと昔の人は食べるのに忙しくて味を褒める暇もなかったのですわ。
That's just you.
でもね、美味しいの一言だけでも嬉しいよ。苦労の甲斐があったかなって。
She blushed a little as she said that.
美味しいです。
With absolutely perfect timing, Rika-chan struck Reina directly with praise. She looked straight at her with an expression of bewitching innocence.
は？
After Reina uttered an unintelligible noise, a ring of smoke rose from her head with an audible poof.
リカちゃん、お持ち帰りじゃなくて、ありがとう。本当に美味しかったですよ。
Reina flushed red with excitement, embracing Rika-chan and rubbing her cheek against her so hard you could almost hear it.
リカちゃんには褒めてもらったお礼に、じゃーん、これをサービスね。
2 apple rabbits. After sticking toothpicks into them, she thrust them toward Rika-chan. After Rika-chan accepted them, the mood suddenly shifted in a bizarre way.
なんだよ、さとこ。その挑戦的な目は。
皆さんにはレナさんのリンゴを獲得できるだけの賛辞が用意できまして。強気じゃんよ。ボキャ品のあんたにどんな賛辞が思いつくっての？ではご覧あそばせ。
After Satoko flashed Mion and me a defiant look, she changed the tone of her voice suddenly.
あのね、
Ah, I'll see you later, horseman.
レナお姉ちゃんのお弁当、サトコも美味しかったよ。
Satoko looked up at her poutily while talking cutesy. What? How is that praise? That's not even persuasion by tears. That's persuasion by cuteness, isn't it? This is a Reina Limited special skill. She blushed and her head spun, waving around in circles. Don't fall it for it, Reina. Of course, that was asking for the impossible. Reina glomped Satoko and began rubbing her cheek against her.
かいかい。サトコちゃんもかいよ。お持ち帰り。はう。
Satoko was also presented with the apple rabbits. After stuffing them into her mouth, she looked over at Mion and me again with that defiant gaze. It took only 5 seconds to take down Reina. That's unfair. To think that she had such a trick.
悔しければレナさんにご褒美がもらえるような賛辞をお考えあそばせ。
Damn it. That was a dirty trick. First of all, that wasn't even praise.
サトコ、それで勝てたつもりとはね。あんたらの底の浅い技とはわけが違うものを見せてあげようじゃない。
それは頼もしいぜミオ。それはどんな技なんだ？
やるのはケイちゃん。はあ？見せてもらおうではございませんか。戸島のあがきを。
The plan of attack she suggested was all wicked. But it was the only thing we had to beat Satoko. After sipping my tea, I started talking, very naturally and calmly. Perfectly.
本当に美味しいよな。これってさ、全部手作りなのかい？
実はね、これほとんど冷凍物なの。
じゃあレナの手作りのってどれだい？
その恥ずかしいな。教えなきゃダメ？どうしても？
From the synergy of boy plus handmade lunchbox, her expression had melted into euphoria.
わかるよ。これでしょ。
Reina turned an even deeper shade of red. The words, I can't believe it, practically written on her face.
なんでわかるかな？レナの手作り。
Of course, Leon had told me beforehand. It's been perfect so far. After acting like I was shy, I waited a beat. Next would be the finisher.
レナの匂いがしたから。
Oh, Jesus. Silence enveloped the area. Reina, face still completely red, froze solid. With a small yelp, Satoko also blushed. Of course, I did too.
レナの手作りのリンゴのウサギさんが食べたいな、なんて。
Even if this was all because I was competing against Satoko, it felt like I had crossed the line by a good 9 yards, I think. Then, at that moment, it was a Tupperware container filled with rabbits.
食べてね、ケイチ君。いっぱいあるんだよ。
What? Instantly, dozens of the apples were shoved into my mouth, knocking me over.
はい、ケイチ君。
My head was forcibly laid upon her lap, and even more apples were shoved into my mouth. While she was squealing, one apple after another was forced into my mouth. More and more apples.
ほうがはほほほえはきごはひは。
ケイちゃん、殉職見事なり。どうよさとこ、うちらの完全勝利だね。こんな手信じられないですの。悔しくないもん。
Satoko grounded her teeth, mortified. We did it. I claimed victory as my conscience drifted slowly away from me. At that time, Raina stopped her squealing as she suddenly realized something.
リカちゃん、食べないの？塩水強すぎたかな？
Looking over, Rika-chan had pulled the toothpick out of the apple rabbit placed into her cupped hands and seemed to be at a loss for what to do.
うさぎさんがかわいそうです。助けてあげてほしいです。
That was the sound of blood spurting from Raina's nose.
かわいいよ。今夜こそ絶対お持ち帰り。
She shook sporadically, her head wobbling back and forth. Then, coming back to her senses, she took all of the apples around me, gathered them up with her flip, and fixed them back upon the plate.
これでみんな寂しくないよね。これリカちゃんにあげるね。
Rika-chan raised up Satoko's hand like a referee after having that plate of rabbit shoved to her. She whispered,
僕たちが勝ちましたです。
ほひやほいや。
Thus, my sacrifice ended up being in vain. It was a fun-filled, crazy day. But as soon as the sun began to set, the end of the day really did come quickly.
じゃあね、レナにケイちゃん。また明日ね。
ミオ、今日はありがとな。楽しかったぜ。
また明日ね。
Satoko and Rika-chan went home as well. We parted ways with Mion, and it ended with just Reina and myself enjoying the evening air on our way home.
ケイチくんも今日は付き合ってくれてありがとう。楽しかった？
ああ、楽しかった。まだ家に帰るのが惜しいくらいだぜ。
あ、じゃあさ、ちょっとだけ寄り道してもいいかな？
寄り道？遠いのか？
ちょっと歩くけどすぐ済むから。
Since we had been walking around all day, I must have seemed a bit tired. Not feeling like teasing Reina, I quietly nodded. Traversing a small path and up a small hill, the land suddenly stretched out before us. There, what looked like the remains of a dilapidated construction site came into view. A large heap of garbage spread out off towards the swamp. Probably illegal dumping. I recorded being in the newspaper.
今日は久しぶりだから何かあるかな？
久しぶりって、レナのようはあのゴミの山かよ。
ゴミじゃないよ。レナにとっては宝の山だもん。
Reina had already entered that well-known cute mode of hers, so that means there was something cute here.
わあ、新しい山だ。ワクワクワクワク。
She descended the unstable slope with ease. I'd expect no less from a born and bred country
お
girl.
い待てよ、今行くから。あったたたた。
My city-raised self was completely pitiful.
いいよ、ケイチくんはそこにいて。すぐ済むから。
Raina kindly declined my accompaniment.
転ぶなよ。足元に気をつけろよ。
大丈夫だよ、大丈夫。全然平気。
Literally bounding among the heaps of trash, Raina disappeared from sight. I didn't like being left behind, but I was still pretty tired from the whole day, so I just ended up waiting. Without the lively Raina around, the surrounding area quickly fell into silence. The cry of the Higurashi gently cooled the air. Fairly exhausted, I began to feel a little sleepy. Just then, the sudden noise of scattering pebbles alerted me to somebody's presence. Startled, I turned around. Standing there was a typical-looking photographer. He spied over at me through his camera. His body was tanned and fit, but something about him seemed unreliable, and he had a bit of an aloof air about him. Well, it didn't seem like he was a bad guy in any case.
おっと、びっくりした。
Although startled when I turned around, he overplayed his reaction. That was my line.
驚いたのはこっちですよ。
ごめんごめん。驚かすつもりはなかったんだ。君はひなみ沢の人かい？
I gathered that he wasn't from that question. And faced by my suspicious gaze, he introduced himself without my prompting.
僕は富武。フリーのカメラマンさ。ひなみ沢にはたまに来るんだ。
I didn't ask who you were.
写真ってのは被写体に断ってから撮るのが礼儀なんじゃないんすかね。
ごめんごめん。メインは野鳥の撮影でね。断った試しがないんだよ。
So what? You're saying I'm the same as the birds?
いやいや、夕闇に黄昏る少年があまりにも絵になっていたんでね。本人の許可を取らずにファインダーを覗いたことを謝るよ。
I'd also pretty slick. All that annoyance I felt for being startled just flew away as he butted me up. I had no intention of hanging around with this guy trying to get cozy with me, except it didn't seem like Reina would be back soon. But this older guy, Tomataki-san, he didn't mind my cautious responses and continued rumbling on by himself.
ケイチくん、待たせてごめんね。もう終わりにするから。
Reina popped her head out from one of the lower piles of garbage and waved her hand.
連れがいたのかい？お、彼女はあんなところで何をしているんだい？
That's what I wanted to know.
さあね。昔起こった殺人事件の死体でも探してるんじゃないですか。
Tomitake-san looked shaken up by that for a moment. Uh-oh. I responded like I would if I were talking with Reina and the others.
嫌な事件だったね。まだ見つかってないんだろ？
ケイチくんお待たせ。待ったかな、かな。
馬に蹴られる前に退散するかな。驚かせてすまなかったね、ケイイチ君。
Tomitake-san chortled suggestively, then disappeared into the twilight. Missing my chance to retort put me off a bit.
ケイチくん怒ってる？どうしてだろう。
It wasn't Reina's fault, so I decided to just brush it off for now.
どうだった？掘り出し物は見つかったか？
聞いて聞いて。あのね、あったの。
Can't experience such a... Oh, same thing.
ランディ君人形ってあれか？ファーストフードの店の前に必ず置いてあるあの等身大人形の？
そう、ランディ君。
Colonel Randy.
お持ち帰りしたい。
I couldn't tell how she decides what's cute or not. But, well, she seems to want it.
あれはゴミだろ。お持ち帰りしたきゃしてもいいんだぜ。
他の山の下敷きになってるの。簡単には掘り出せないし、あそこ明かりがないからすぐ暗くなっちゃうし。
Reina seemed quite down about finding her treasure and not being able to bring it back.
俺も手伝ってやるよ。今日のうまかった弁当の 恩返しってことでさ。
ありがとう。
Birds heading home to roost proclaimed that nightfall would soon be upon us.
ケイチくんが手伝ってくれる。ランディくんをお持ち帰りできる。は
Raina staggered along as if intoxicated in her dreamy state of mind. I tried asking her in a way that wouldn't take her out of her cheery state.
なあレナ、あそこで昔なんかあったのか？
ダムの工事をやってたんだってね。詳しく知らないけど。
例えばさ、工事中になんかあったとか、事故とか。
知らない。
Her tone was disturbingly frank. It sounded more like a denial than an answer. I must have appeared rather dumbstruck. Raina quickly lightened her expression.
実はね、去年までよそに住んでたの。
レナも転校生だったのか？俺はてっきり。
だからね、それ以前のことはよく知らないの。ごめんね。
Don't really know. Don't want to talk about it. That was the kind of feeling she gave me. Thinking about it, of course, it would be like that. This wasn't the type of things girls would enjoy talking about. It was quite a disturbing incident. They still haven't found one of the arms. If it's just like Tomataki-san said, then I had a feeling only the Higurashi would know. Maya Baramoa and damn site murder. Yep. I'm going to stop here for now because I'm quite hungry. I'll probably continue this on tomorrow after work. I think it'll be fun.